What's going on, everybody? Today I wanted to talk about combat rating and how it's basically become a useless stat, or will be as soon as we enter Hell 5. And even in Hell 4, the difference between the beginning of it and when we reach Paragon 150 and getting all that gear equipped, it basically makes the stat completely worthless compared to really searching for those set items, which I'm going to go over all of it in this video. Let's get into it. Alright, so first thing I want to mention is that if you are an early to mid-game player, then this does not apply to you necessarily, because when you're an early to mid-game player, you're going to be traveling through Hell 1, Hell 2, Hell 3, etc. But if you're an end-game player, what I would consider an end-game player is if you are above the server Paragon or near the top of the server Paragon, which is currently 160, and you can farm Hell 4 with reasonable ease. And now most free-to-play players can very well do this very easily at this point, because we've gotten way past the server Paragon level of the minimum level of Hell 4. And what is that? Well, that's 150 to equip Hell 4 items. And when we actually do equip Hell 4 items, we get such a massive combat rating boost that the previous amount required, which is about 30 to 50 if you want to efficiently farm this area, does not matter. In fact, when I fully equip all my gear and all that stuff, I'm at 4,400. Granted, I am a pay-to-win player, which means that combat rating would be about 3,900 if I was completely free to play, which again is way above the combat rating recommended if I was free to play. So again, combat rating basically doesn't matter in search of these set items. So when I'm looking for my set items, I really could not care less if they were exceptional, triple stat, whatever. Granted, that would be amazing, but I want to just showcase what the soft caps of combat rating actually are. Because I know many of you out there are going to say, wait, Vale, you get a bonus from damage and damage reduction by having a higher combat rating than your opponent, so why doesn't it matter? Well, I'm going to go ahead and showcase what the soft caps are in PvE and in PvP, and how much combat rating you kind of need to be in the range of your opponents in order for you to actually get any value whatsoever. So right here, I've equipped unequipped two pieces of my gear and one legendary gem to go ahead and showcase what it was like if I was at 34 or 33 combat rating. At this point, I'm in this mode 183 combat rating above the combat rating in Hell 4, which of course isn't a crazy amount above, but it is a decent amount above the recommended combat rating. And you can see here, I'm going to increase all damage I deal by 10% and decrease all damage I take by 9%. So if we just look at the bottom little section right here, you can see against players, you cannot gain more than 10% damage increase or damage reduction. So in situations where you're PvPing, that means the Rite of Exile, that means the Vault, that means any situation where you're in Battlegrounds, any sort of PvP mode, you only need about 180 combat rating above your opponent to get maximum value from combat rating from PvP. You literally cannot get any better from getting more combat rating. So literally combat rating is a useless stat after you reach this combat rating threshold. Now, if we were to just go ahead and sock it in one of my legendary gems here, I'll gain about 78 combat rating, and we'll increase that to 12% and 11% at 261. So you can see anywhere from about 200 combat rating is about the maximum you'll get, because we were at 9% damage reduction, so about 200 combat rating is the maximum. Now this 60 extra combat rating that I managed to equip literally means absolutely nothing in terms of PvP. Now, this can also be extrapolated to PvE circumstances, and I'll go ahead and go over the soft cap of combat rating in PvE circumstances, because it doesn't have the same hard cap as the PvP combat rating bonuses, because it literally just doesn't say, but there is a soft cap because of such diminishing returns, and I'll go ahead and equip my pieces here in just a moment and showcase that. So really quickly, equipping our chest piece and our helmet here is going to give us a bunch of combat rating up to 4,404. And if we just go ahead and hover over, you can see that our damage increased is by 22% and our damage decreased is by 18%. So that is the amount of damage we're dealing in excess, and also decreasing the damage we're taking from our PvE encounters. Now, if I were to just take off the helmet, for example, just showcasing it from 4,400 down to about 4,000, we could see, if we just click on combat rating, we're down to 20% and 8 and 16%, which means we've lost 400 combat rating, and we only lost 2% damage increase and 2% damage reduction, which is hardly anything. That's literally the effect of a charm if you were to also include the damage reduction as a charm component. if we were to just go ahead and equip some more legendary gems and remove some socketed gems here just to get a little bit less combat rating, down to, let's just remove another gem here, and we are down to 3,800. We're down to 18% and 15% damage reduction, which is about another 2% per at 550 combat rating. So obviously, the more combat rating you have above, it starts to get worse and worse in terms of return on investment, up until a point where there's a soft cap. If I were to go ahead and equip my gems back over and just swap to an easy difficulty, like let's say Hell 3, you will be able to see the basically soft cap of value you can get from combat rating in terms of damage increase and damage reduction decrease. So right here, we can just go into combat rating. You can see I have 2,284 combat rating, higher than the rating, which previously in Hell 4 I was about 1,000 over, and you can see the damage increase and damage reduction is exactly the same. It's 22% increase, 18% decrease. So from 1,100 combat rating higher to again 2,300 combat rating higher, I literally gain 0 value in PvE. So that whole amount of combat rating literally means nothing. And so when you reach to the point where you're about 1,000 combat rating higher than your difficulty, combat rating literally means nothing. Like it does not mean, oh, you're only getting a couple percent, and then there's an argument to say, oh, well, maybe that's worth it over a certain set item because that set item does, you know, circumstantial stuff, or et cetera, et cetera. It literally just doesn't give you anything. And so the whole point of this whole video here is to basically showcase that combat rating, because it means nothing, because we've unlocked Hell 4 and the completion of our entire set items, the goal should just be to farm the set items themselves and get the set effects, regardless of whether or not they give you triple stat combat ratings or anything like that. The other argument to this as well is the attributes here, which, okay, these attributes increase your armor a little bit, or your life. For example, 118 vitality here is going to give us 354 life. If we happen to have something like intelligence here, I'm going to get 37 damage from it. So if I were to have a triple stat, I would be missing out on, let's say, like about 300 life, 30 damage, or 11 armor, or 11 armor pen, and things like that. So the only exception to this, and the only argument against that combat rating and the stats and the triple stats, farming those don't really matter, is that you're going to get additional armor and armor pen, or potency and resistance, or potential a little bit more damage in life. But you can see here, when we're talking about my stats in specific, 30 damage is such a low amount. It is less than 1% of my stats in terms of damage. 1% is absolutely super, super low. Already, it is about 0.5%. In fact, if we do some rough math here, of my damage and a little bit less of my life. However, the more important thing to look at is actually armor, armor pen, potency, and resistance, because these actually matter since you have such low amounts. So going for intelligence, or rather fortitude, willpower, things like that actually do matter a little bit. But again, it's such low amounts. And again, it doesn't matter at all in considering if you're fighting a whale or someone who has such massively increased stats over you, or you can't reach that threshold. For example, my armor pen is 185 higher, and so I can't really get my damage a crazy, crazy amount more in Hell 3. But if I were to swap over to Hell 4 here, you'll see my armor pen is just slightly higher from what I remember than my difficulty. 5 higher, literally very slight, and so I can increase my crit hit damage by quite a bit by looking for those stats. So kind of a recap for this video. Look at your combat rating. If you've reached the soft cap or you're nearing the soft cap, focus on set effects. After you get your set effects, the next thing to look for is specifically focus on stats within your attributes. What I mean by this is focus on the fortitude, focus on the willpower, focus on getting armor, extra armor pen, because that's going to give you more value. Or you could focus on intelligence and get a little bit of extra damage. But in my opinion, when we're talking about such low stat increases, this 11 armor pen is much more in terms of percentage compared to my damage. As I mentioned, my damage, getting that damage stat is 0.5%, but getting, for example, a little bit of armor pen here is about 2%. So it's 4 times as valuable of my armor pen than compared to my armor, and it can give me a lot more damage in the long run. And in PvP, none of the stats nor the attributes matter. a lot of the times because you're going to be fighting whales, and so focus on damage in life. So there's the kind of TLDR of the whole thing. Keep in mind, combat rating starting to not matter at all. If you're pushing for higher combat rating difficulties, go for it, get as much combat rating as possible. And of course, it will start to matter as we get closer to Hell 5. But for right now, including for the next about month to 2 months, we will not be worrying about that because we will not have access to Hell 5 at least for another month. So focus on your set items, get those bonuses. They're massive, and I'll have videos about them coming up soon because I've been farming dungeons like crazy and hope to be able to test all of them for you before you start farming them yourself. And I'll see you then.